Your board is contributing in important ways to the success of your school, but if you've already watched the first tutorial in this series, the role of the board, it means you want not just a good board, but a great one. Hi, I'm Jack Peterson with Managing for Mission. Managing for Mission specializes in administrative consulting for faith-based schools. This tutorial is one of 3 that looks at the board's role and 8 best practices that are key to bringing boards to that next level. Even if your board is using all 8, these tutorials will give ideas that will help you receive their full benefit. In this tutorial, we'll focus on best practices for becoming a great board: new member recruitment, formation, self-evaluation, and the board's policy manual. Being on a board is a little like coming down off a mountain. If you get started in the wrong direction, it's harder and harder to get back to the right one. If new board members aren't properly identified, recruited, and oriented, the board will deal with the mismatch of skills and expectations for years. Here are some ways to avoid that. First of all, identify needs and candidates. The board should maintain a profile in spreadsheet form that identifies current board members' term expiration, committee assignments, association with the school, gender, ethnicity, profession, and skills. Using this profile, a nominating committee can identify coming gaps and compile a list of candidates to fill them. Second, carefully recruit new board members. Involving the board chair, the chief administrator, and one other board member in the ask will give the prospective trustee the feel of belonging to a team. Having prepared materials that answer the nominee's questions will demonstrate the board's commitment to the new member and to its own processes. The common questions nominees have are: what is the school's mission statement? What are the expectations of board members? How much of a time commitment is it? When does the board meet? Who else is on the board? What are the school's strategic goals for the next few years? But the most important thing they want to know is, why are you asking me? What do you expect me to bring to the board? And don't be afraid that being honest about board expectations will scare them off. The right person will be attracted by your enthusiasm and by the serious way that the board approaches prospective candidates. The recruitment process is a good start, but a formal orientation process will help bring the new trustee up to speed quickly. In this orientation, he or she is introduced to school leadership, as well as key processes and documents like the mission statement, the strategic plan, the expectations of the sponsoring religious body, school history, and current issues that the board is grappling with. This orientation can begin with a dinner meeting at the start of the school year, but it should also include other opportunities during the course of the year. Some schools assign a mentor as a resource person for the neophyte trustee. The orientation process just described is applicable to any board of any organization, but faith-based schools have to take this a step further with what we call formation. Their mission, which the board is in place to support, is to foster not only the intellectual growth of their students, but their spiritual growth as well. Trustees must understand that, but they must also be committed to their own spiritual growth. There's a difference between information and formation. Formation is experiential. It is regular, and it is geared to the needs of trustees as they grow on the board. For our students, we think through a curriculum to guide them through their years at our school, rather than simply presenting unconnected lessons and courses. Similarly, we need to think through how a trustee will grow over their 3 to 6 years on the board, and design a formation program to foster that growth. Maybe, for instance, the second-year trustees have already been trained on group discernment, so you don't want to repeat it for them. But the first-year folks still need it. An effective formation program has some common elements for all trustees, like the board retreat, and some elements geared to the needs of each cohort. An important element of any growth process is self-evaluation. We learn from experience, but only if we reflect honestly on that experience. An individual may be able to do this for herself in an informal way because there's only one self doing the evaluating. But that won't work for a board because each trustee would know only his own feelings about how the board is functioning. A regular, formal process in which everyone participates is needed for the board as a whole to learn from its experience how things are going and how they can be improved. The question should ask trustees to rate the quality of their meetings, decision-making processes, agendas, the presentations, and information they receive, committee effectiveness, their relationship with the administration, and whether the board has the kinds of members it needs. It should also ask trustees to rate their own participation and effectiveness, as well as how the experience has gone for them and how it could be better. The results of the self-evaluation should be discussed in a meeting where the board can prioritize the improvements it wants to make and set goals for the coming year. The bylaws provide general rules within which the board and the school operate. But over time, the board will develop its own policies to govern itself and the school. As trustees join and leave the board, it's important that they have one place to find all the board policies currently in force. These might include the processes for electing officers, approving new members, approving the budget, conducting a self-evaluation, or evaluating the chief administrative officer. Having a policy manual spares the board from reinventing processes once it has developed them, but it doesn't prevent the board from modifying them as its needs change. Board policy manuals can be kept in hard copy form, but schools are finding it more helpful to maintain them online, often on a web page that's linked to the school's website. This gives access to them from anywhere, and trustees can be assured that the manual they're looking at is up to date. The board policy manual comes under the purview of the board secretary, but is generally maintained by a member of the school staff. These best practices around recruitment, formation, self-evaluation, and the board policy manual will strengthen the effectiveness of your board if you're not already using them. And if you are, be sure to review them regularly to make sure your board is receiving the full benefit. In the third tutorial in this series, Doing the Board's Work, we'll look at 4 other areas where best practices can increase the effectiveness of your board: committees, strategic planning, evaluating the chief administrator, and board philanthropy. Thank you for your efforts to learn more about effective boards and your work to make sure that your school's board is one of them.